Hey y'all, so today I am doing a review on A Little Life by Hanya Gahara. I have a lot to say about this book. I read it on suggestion of Paperback Dreams, and she told me exactly what I was going to get out of it, and I was still surprised by what I got. I don't really tend to cry or tear up in books. I just don't. I really haven't. I feel for characters and I understand what they're going through and I feel bad, but for the most part, I don't actually tear up and cry. This book made me cry no less than 4 times, and I teared up several more. It is honestly, and this is going to be the no spoiler part, and then I'll get into spoilers later and warn you guys when to skip ahead to, but I've never read a book that had characters that feel so real as this book does. Hanya Yanagihara does an amazing job on making these characters feel so real, and because of that, that's why I cried. That's why I felt so sad. These characters, I don't want to say that a lot of authors have single, like, 2D characters where they only have 2 or 3 characteristics, because a lot of characters do have depth like that, but these characters just had little quirks, little tiny things, and several of those things that made them so real, and gave them just that spark of life that I've never experienced before. So amazing. And I'm just gonna warn you, you're probably gonna cry. My cat's joining me. But you're probably gonna cry. So I'm just gonna warn you. There's some trigger warnings that I probably should let y'all know. I'll go ahead and do the trigger warnings at the beginning of the spoilers. That way, if you don't want to have that much spoilers, even the trigger warnings going into it, you don't have to, but I'll put it at the very beginning of the spoiler warnings before I actually get into spoilers. So, but my main complaint is, if you can tell, is, 816 pages. It's huge. It's very big. It's a very floppy book. I love it, but the pages are very thin. I don't know if you can really tell, but it has some pretty hefty, like, these paragraphs can get lengthy. My cat. Anyway, the paragraphs get really lengthy, and sometimes they feel a bit long-winded. Now, at the beginning of the book, especially when you're getting to know the characters, I didn't really mind. You really get into it, you really feel it. Now, by the time I was in the last quarter of this book, it is so heavy and so sad that it almost drained me emotionally and physically to read it. And I wanted to just push through. I wanted to keep reading it. I didn't want to stop, but sometimes, sir, shh, but sometimes, hang on. Okay, sorry about that. So anyway, it is very long-winded, and toward the end, it's not that it's hard to say that I didn't enjoy it, because I did really enjoy reading it. It is a great story, and I feel like it has so many things to say, but it is very hard and heavy to read on your heart. And after a while, it just, because she writes with so much detail in their thought process, all the characters' thought process, and so you really understand what they're thinking the entire time. And sometimes it gets to be a bit too much, because I was just, especially toward the end, I knew what he was thinking, because he doesn't change, and, well, he does change, but some things don't change, and it just kind of got hard to read over and over. Sometimes it did drone on a little bit. That would be my only complaint, but it's still beautiful. It's still a beautiful book, and I would absolutely suggest it. 5 stars for me. A Little Life. It's hard to say, and it's hard to give something 5 stars when And it's hard to say that I enjoy reading a book when it made me so sad to read it. And I kept telling everybody, like, I just don't want to read it because I'm just not in the mood to be sad right now. So it's kind of hard to say, yes, I give it 5 stars, but I do. It is an incredible story, and it has a lot to say, and it means so much. And there are some things in here that just hit home, and it's amazing. If you can handle something that's heavy and sad, and you can handle the triggers, I would definitely suggest it. Now, trigger warning for the book, before I get into spoilers. It deals heavily with abuse and sexual abuse and severe mental illness, and self-harm, I think, would be another trigger warning on that. So keep that in mind, please. Take care of yourself. Don't read something that's going to put you in a bad place. But I wanted to put that kind of at the end, just because sometimes some trigger warnings are too much spoilers, but sometimes they're necessary, and I want to help you guys. So now we'll go ahead and get fully into the actual spoilers. So we'll go ahead and put up the time of when you need to skip forward. So, spoilers, definitely heavy to read. There were some quotes in there that I really connected to, especially the quote, and I'm paraphrasing, but it said, it's hard to explain to the healthy the logic of the sick. And I really understood that. I come from where a lot of people in my family were very sick, deathly sick. So I kind of understand, because especially when I was young, it was hard for me to understand some of the things that my father would say or do. And, especially after reading this, it's easier for me to kind of see where he's coming from, why he felt the way he felt, why he said the things he said, why he did the things he did. When I got to the part of where the name of the book came from, definitely cried, and I had to put the book down. Because you go into this book thinking, oh, A Little Life, it's talking about a life. That's literally what it's doing. And when you read that portion and the phrase comes into play, you're just, whew, it's heavy. And I had to put the book down for a while. It's not what I thought at all. So much worse. But I will say that moment that you read it, that you catch it, it really hits you. And I feel like it is an excellent name for this book. 100% job well done for her for choosing it. Is very fitting. Now, I'll say something that I felt kind of bad feeling when I was reading it, is after a while, especially in like the last quarter of the book, I started to really feel a lot of frustration with Jude. And as someone who, I used to deal with depression, I used to deal with suicidal thoughts myself, and sometimes when people would complain about it, I would get defensive, and say, well, you don't know what it's like to deal with this, and, I'm sorry that I'm bringing you down, or, any of those other horrible things to think and say. And it is hard whenever you hear friends say, well, you're just so down all the time, or you're just not fun to be around anymore. And it's hard to deal with that, and to, know what you're doing to your friends and still pull yourself out of it. It's very difficult. And so I know his pain, and I know his struggle in that aspect, not with what he went through, but with that aspect of dealing with depression and suicidal thoughts. And so since I'm in the place of my life that I am now, in a healthier place, it was even frustrating for me, and it made me understand my friends so much more back when we were younger, because it's so hard to keep understanding, like keep being that understanding friend and being there for your friend when they're going through something like that, if they refuse to get help, if they refuse to do anything about it, if they refuse to change, it's very hard. And so I feel like I have both Willem and Jude's perspectives. I understand them so well because I understand Jude's unwillingness to change, his fear of change, his belief that change on his side isn't going to help him. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to change what happened to him. And I get that. But I also understand Willem's frustration with loving someone that's doing this to themselves, and it being hard to watch your loved one go through that and do that. So I understand both of them. And like I said, these characters are so real that I'm almost tearing up just thinking about it. And when Jude finally commits suicide, it just broke my heart because you know what, I know what he was going through, and as someone who went to that edge and came back from it, even in people that especially people that I know in my real life, it's so hard to really get over that feeling of just that sadness of knowing that that person went to that same ledge you did and couldn't come back from it and went over it anyway. And knowing that, now I know that so much happiness was waiting for me if I could just get through that part. And so it really hit me hard. When there's several things that just hit me hard, and that's one of them. So I'm going to backtrack because I'm getting emotional. Another thing that really hit me was the quote that Jude had when he's talking about when he did his first suicide attempt, and Willem is trying to help him through it because he actually almost died, but he didn't. And so like all of his friends are, watching him, making sure he doesn't try again. He made a comment of that he had to stay alive to prove to Willem that he wanted to, even though he wanted to die, not because of his depression, but because he was just so exhausted. And it was so close to my father's last words that he said to me. My father didn't commit suicide, but he was sick. Just physically sick. He had a lot of health problems. And so we talked about things like that. So it just, like I said, so many aspects of this book are so real. And if you can handle the triggers and the sadness, it is so in-depth and so insightful that it's an amazing read. Amazing. Just, I will just go ahead and wrap it up because I'm getting so emotional. But absolutely 5 stars. I have a review on my Goodreads and on my website, which will be linked down below. So go ahead and hopefully you subscribe, give me a like, and I'll have another video up in about a week. And I'll talk to y'all soon. Y'all take care.